Sure, I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. Are these on?
I think so. Well, so good afternoon, everybody. I think we're going to get started. It's a few minutes after 4 o'clock. We've got a little bit of a presentation here for the HUD Consolidated Plan, which is, well, we'll run through it, but it's a requirement of the CDBG program and a few other programs as listed, that in order for us to continue to receive our allocation from HUD, we have to go through this 5-year application process and then annual action plans that occur throughout the 5 years. And then every 5 years we go back out and we look to hear from the public and hear about how we're, present what we've been doing with the funds and hear if there's any additional thoughts as to how we might be able to utilize the funds in a more efficient or such manner. Is there any way to know if there are people online? I don't know or is that not?
Were you going to monitor that by chance or not? Well, how about I give you mine?
Okay. That'll work. I can do that.
I think that might be a good idea.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to take notes.
No worries. See, was there a Zoom link for this one or not?
Yeah, there is.
There is.
Yeah. You can just-
Thank you.
yeah.
I know our friends in the back, we got us live on YouTube, as I understand it. So that is out there as well. But there's no way of knowing how many people might be viewing that I'm aware of. With such a small group here, we were wondering maybe if we did like a quick round robin of introductions as to who's in the room, if that's all right with everybody. I am Patrick Sheld, Administrative Services Manager with the Vermont Community Development Program, which is the program within the Agency of Commerce and Community Development and the Department of Housing and Community Development that administers the state CDBG program.
And I'm Ann Kroll, Director of Director of Federal Programs within the department. And so I just want to say that, first of all, that I'll thank you all that are here. Wish there were more of you here. But if there are people that are online, that's great. And, this is an opportunity for, as we're doing our 5-year outreach, for people to weigh in on, our priorities that we have set over the last 5 years and potentially change those. I mean, we haven't for years and years and years because there is such a demand recently for housing. That's been our number one priority. Number 2 is usually economic development, and then public facilities and public services. But, we're always being challenged with, subtle underlying other currents of things such as farm worker housing, but that's still housing. And some people think, oh, that's something different. But there are subtleties of other things that in childcare, daycare centers, that comes under public facilities. So there are other things that we're looking at as well that may not rise to the top of being priority number 1, but that we want to look at those as well and make sure that we're looking at all angles of this. And now is the opportunity, as we're in this 5-year look back at what we've been doing, and we want to look forward for 5 years. So.
Yeah. So as we receive our allocation, it gets split into CDBG, into home, into ESG, which is Emergency Solutions Grants. And we have a couple of our partners here. Maybe we'll turn it to them first to introduce yourselves in the program real quick.
Yeah. We want to start.
Can I just make
Yeah, absolutely.
a comment?
Yeah.
So Patrick, if you could open the link, so the way this would work
Oh.
is it would show all the people
I don't even know how I can
who
Oh, that are online. Yes.
And then you would share your screen to put the presentation up.
Oh, okay. Jamie, where do I find the link?
I'm sorry.
No, where is it? Should I go to our website?
That's right.
Our website.
Maybe.
Our website is under Consolidated Plan Public.
Oh, I gotta get online. Oops.
They kept telling me I didn't have a proper name. Which is weird.
St. Johnsbury guest with
Huh.
capital T in town and capital G in guest.
I guess I should have bring my computer.
Exclamation 82.
Thank you all for being patient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one didn't. There's no one for this one here.
Oh, I guess we don't have a Zoom link.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we did.
It's being live streamed.
Yes, it is being live streamed.
All right. Well, I guess we just have
But
to.
they can watch it, they can't communicate it and ask questions.
Oh,
Well, I hope there's contact information at the end, and if not, I'll put it up for them to be able to send us questions after the fact.
but I thought, Joe, you had given us a link, hadn't you?
Yeah, the link was for the YouTube link,
Oh.
Oh, okay.
right? Zach, do I understand that correctly? Yes.
Okay. Well, all right. So back to where.
Carry on, sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, every community is a little, sounds a little different. I'm Lily Sojourner, I'm the Director of the Office of Economic Opportunity within the Department for Children and Families and the Agency of Human Services. And we administer the Emergency Solutions Grant, which is part of the overall consolidated plan.
My name is Shannon Trainer. I work at Vermont Housing and Conservation Board in the housing area and under the federal programs, and I mostly do compliance monitoring.
I'm Leah Sayre, Senior Housing Analyst with Vermont Housing and Conservation Board also. We administer home funds to the state of Vermont, and then we also receive National Housing Trust funds, and so the consolidated plan applies to the HTF funds as well.
Sure. Hi, Dave Snedeker, Director of the Northeastern Vermont Development Association. We're the Regional Planning and Economic Development Corporation for the three-county area of the kingdom. We're an occasional CDBG grantee, and we also have a growing loan fund that's capitalized with CDBG grant funds.
And providing the nice snacks that we have.
On the house.
I'm Kyle Byer. I'm also with NVDA and Regional Planning. Everyone, Casey Richardson, Director of Economic and Community-Based Services at NECA. We receive a lot of housing funding and run the NK shelter here in town. And then we also have a couple of other programs within that, looking at childcare and stuff like that. So, you can follow us at
Ken Lensley, I'm a Danville representative to the NVDA Board of Directors.
Wonderful.
Great.
Joe Kasperzak, I'm the Assistant Town Manager here in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, and housing is my #1 priority. I just wrote that in my narrative for the town plan.
Excellent.
I'm Jamie. I'm with the Housing Division of the Department of Housing and Community Development.
I'm Killian Brooks. I am a member of Akron's Housing as a Human Rights Coalition, Tenant Housing Union, and this meeting is like barely started, and it's already so different from what I've seen in Akron. I can't wait to observe.
Well, did you want to? Oh, no, sorry, I thought you were raising your hand in the back. Well, thank you all for coming. As mentioned, there are some snacks there. Please feel free to get up at any point and grab some coffee and whatnot. And I believe there's some bathrooms here as well. So we'll just kind of dive in, I suppose. We got a little bit of a presentation here, and then we just hope to maybe have a little bit of a discussion. I should also say that there's a survey that is out there as well. If you haven't already filled it out, we would appreciate. There are some QR links within the presentation, but I also brought some handouts as well. If anybody wanted to take a picture of the QR code there and fill out the survey, we would greatly appreciate it. Just another element of our citizen participation and outreach. All right, so what we're going to try and do is just kind of go through an overview of the comp plan itself. I will try really hard not to speak in acronyms, and if I do and anybody doesn't understand, please stop me and I will
wrap your knuckles.
Yeah, and but comp plan is the shorthand version of consolidated plan, so I'll probably just refer to that one as con plan moving forward. We're here doing our public outreach, opportunities for public comment. There's some slides and data on a community profile that was pulled together that kind of gives some regional community data as well as data as it pertains to St. Johnsbury as well around housing statistics and just general demographics. And then hopefully we'll have some discussion and questions afterwards. So who works on the consolidated plan? It's
I think that's
us.
what we've all indicated.
Us that introduced ourselves at the beginning, Agency of Commerce, Department of Housing and Community Development, and partnership. The Agency of Commerce is the grantee to HUD, and then we do sub-grant home funds to VHCB, HTF funds as well, the Housing Trust funds, and then the Emergency Solutions Grant we pass over to our friends at the Agency of Human Services and Office of Economic Opportunity to use those funds. And we'll hear about how those funds get utilized in a little bit. So as mentioned, often referred to as the con plan, it is our application to HUD to let HUD know how we plan to use the funds. It is a formula grant, so we do pretty much receive it every single year, but HUD does want occasional check-ins to see what our plan is and how we anticipate using the funds in a 5-year projection. And then annually there is an action plan that we kind of report back to HUD to say exactly what we did and then our plan for the following year. So first up, it looks like we got home here on the presentation, home administered by VHCB, which is the Vermont Housing Conservation Board. Focuses to increase housing opportunities to low-income households. Typically, home contributes to about 5 to 8 projects per year. Some recent projects here in Northeast Vermont that home has been a part of over the past few years is as you can read here, Wells River Historic Housing, Village Center Apartments, Caledonia Crossing, West Burke, Caledonia Renaissance, as well as the Greensboro School Revitalization.
And typically, there will be projects where we are in together. For instance, the West Burke housing, there will be CDBG funds and home funds, HTF, the whole stack. There's a lot of funding that goes in to make these things work, along with state funds as well. A lot of VHCB state funds will go into these projects. Well, historic
Yes,
tax credits, yes, exactly. Yep.
In addition, VHCB also administers the National Housing Trust funds. And some recent projects there is the new Avenue Apartments here in St. Johnsbury, again, Wells River, as you can see, in West Burke. So that crossover funding stacks, as we just mentioned.
Right.
And I don't know if there's anything you want to add about home or HTF at this point.
I'll just say that the HTF funds are really focused on low and extremely low income households, so that means the rents need to be affordable to those folks at 50% or below. And so typically projects that we put HTF in also have some type of rental subsidy, because that's the best way to utilize those funds and be able to meet that extremely low or low income threshold for these funds.
And I guess the other thing to mention on the HTF is that money goes directly to VHCB. It really doesn't go through the con plan, but it's part of this whole package that we put together for HUD because it's funding that HUD administers. So they do want to know what we're doing with that money.
Yeah.
Here we have the Emergency Solutions Grants administered by AHS, and maybe I'll let Lily speak a little bit here about ESG and what you guys use the funds for.
Sure. So there's a number of potential eligible uses under Emergency Solutions Grant. We have historically prioritized shelter as one of our primary uses. There is a restriction that no more than 60% of the ESG award can be used on shelter. So then we have also utilize the rest of the funds to support our statewide homeless management information system project. You'll see later, we get about $700,000 a year in ESG, so it's not a huge chunk of change for us. So again, we use it right now. It supports most of one shelter project in the state, and then it supports, again, our statewide homeless management information system. And we really are then able to leverage ESG, emergency solutions grant guidance, training, and technical assistance to benefit the whole network. And again, that information management system is really helpful in terms of giving us important data and supporting our statewide reporting.
And then the community development block grants is the state CDBG program, which Ann and I administer out of the Department of Housing and Community Development, providing funding for, as Ann mentioned, our priorities of housing, economic development, public facilities, and public service. As Ann kind of alluded to, public facilities is really kind of a catch-all phrase for anything that is not housing or economic development. Economic development is specifically job creation or job retention is what we would get involved in. And so public facilities covers that broad brush of just about everything else. Child care centers, senior centers, water, sewer infrastructure. Those tend to be the big ones we get for applications. And then public service would be, so public facility being the bricks and mortar, public facility being paying for operations, if you want to think of it that way. And then we just have a rundown of some of the recent CDBG funded projects here in the Northeast Kingdom. As you can see, we got involved, Yellow Barn and Hardwick. I do have little descriptions. I'll try and sit for a second if people are interested in reading what the descriptions are. Currently here in St. Johnsbury, we've funded the removal of blight, I suppose, from the armory.
Yes.
It's a slums and blight national criteria that we met, and that funding is critical to that project, so it's really impactful.
Yeah, to get the building ready for its redevelopment.
Right.
But the whole back part's been removed, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
One thing we do fund with the CDBG dollars that we get is the Northeast Kingdom Home Repair Program, which is operated by Rural Edge, and this is a program that provides low interest loans and grants to low income households to do essential home repairs. And we partner with all 5 NeighborWorks home ownership centers throughout the state. And so here in the Northeast Kingdom, it's operated by Rural Edge, but we also operate statewide with this same program. As you can see, we were also involved in New Avenue. Olivia Place was a few years back, but up in Linden, and of course CDBG was involved with the Westbrook housing as well. And then in addition to providing what we call the implementation grants, which were those construction grants, we do offer planning grants, and here are some planning grants that have been utilized recently in the area that we have helped with pre-development and feasibility studies to help get these projects kind of going and get them moving.
You working on that one?
We are, yeah. Yeah.
You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so Northeast Kingdom Community Action, we have a location at Lincoln Street, right here in town, and we're hoping to bring all of our services under one kind of roof, one campus. So that has been being utilized to look at feasibility studies, planning, architecture, stuff like that. It's been immensely helpful.
Good.
To be able to move some of those things forward in a financial way where we would be able to typically take on the burden of that financial cost for those planning things.
Yeah.
So.
Great.
Yeah, and I should mention NVDA was probably involved in some of those previous projects as well. Yeah.
So one thing we've noticed, we've been really successful with our EPA Brownfield Assessment Fund over the last since 2018, and that's usually early in money to then follow it up by CDBG money for the construction.
Yep.
It's good to leverage.
Yeah.
All right. So moving in, I think this is going to get into a little bit more of the meat of the con plan itself. the goals that HUD puts forward that we have to try and then squeeze our priorities within are to provide decent housing, suitable living environment, and expand economic opportunities. We've taken those goals and developed our goals and priorities, as Ann mentioned earlier, and these are listed actually in order of our priority, to increase affordable and quality of affordable housing, create and retain jobs, decrease the number of experiencing homelessness, and strengthen our communities to improve quality of life. As I mentioned, in addition to the 5-year con plan, we do provide, and HUD requires annual action plans that we submit to HUD every spring. And, you know, like I said, it just kind of reiterates our state's specific objectives. If there are little tweaks that we sometimes will make in between the 5-year consolidated plan based on feedback that we've received from the public or from project partners. But in large part, it's also a report back to HUD as to what we did the previous year too. I guess that's the caper too, but it's all in one and the same. So as I mentioned, the allocations, I believe all of them are formula based, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so at the moment, I think it's largely based on population. It tends to be one of the bigger triggers. So being a small
and poverty and real estate, which is been an unfortunate driver, you know, of recent years. I think ever since COVID, where we all saw, and I don't mean this to be. It sounds negative, and it has been a negative situation, but a negative driver for our formula, but good for, I suppose, in some aspects of the state, where, you know, people from out of state bought up, you know, sight unseen, and drove up the real estate market. And with that, it actually drove down our allocations. So actually, probably since COVID, we've lost probably over $400,000 in our CDBG allocation. Now, home gets the state minimum, so the $3 million is the state minimum, so that's fast and steady. Whereas CDBG is really caught in that formula-driven aspect. They're still looking at what do they call that? The reauthorization of our program. I know many of our fellow states out there go, I think like Mississippi and others say, oh, we don't want anybody to touch that because they're afraid that they're going to lose their money, whereas we want that to be looked at because I think it would help ours, you know, maybe level out a little more, and we might see ours hopefully go back up. There were days gone by where we were close to near $9 million, and to look at what we're at 7.4, I have no idea what we're going to get this year for 2025, but I would say it's probably going to be around the 7.4. But yeah, so home is a state min. ESG's pretty much stays around the 700,000. There have been days where it was 750, I think probably many years ago. I saw where it was closer to 750. But that's been a long time ago. HTF is based on the what is it? What's the formula for that? That's based on, oh gosh, I can't think. The return of it's on a tax formula that it's based on that. So that kind of goes up and down a little bit. And occasionally home will get a few $1,000s more by some states that don't use some of their funds. It gets redistributed back. And so we've occasionally gotten, $4,000 or $5,000, which is like, seriously, we have to mess around and deal with that, but okay. But yeah, it's a formula driven. Yeah.
Formula consistent across all the states?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there any ability to tweak it state by state?
Oh, no, by statute. This is, you know, where it's the statute for CDBG, for instance. And that's what, you know, we're looking at, the reauthorization of the program. It hasn't been looked at since 1992. And I think that that's what some of the, you know, this, I know this sounds denigrating, but the poorer states, like Mississippi and that, they feel like they're going to stand to lose if there is a reauthorization. But I don't think, they've looked hard and fast at, some of those states have grown in their populations. We've lost population. And I don't think maybe in the long run theirs would level out and they wouldn't lose. But, somebody has to look at this because 1992 was quite a few years ago.
Yeah, and just to be clear, it's statute at the federal level from
Yeah.
U.S. Congress
Yeah,
that
it's
does
not
this.
ours. Thanks.
And then, did you want to touch on HOPO at all, or I don't even remember what the acronym stands for. I know it's
Housing for people with AIDS.
Yeah.
Yeah, and VHCB actually gets that. They have to apply for that, and that's as a formula funding, competitive. They have to actually apply for it to get it, and you have had recently that, yeah.
Yeah, and administer it's housing opportunities for persons with AIDS funds to the
Yeah.
HIV organizations throughout the state, who then, so we provide them some operational funding and we still do rental assistance also.
So we don't at Vermont Housing Conservation Board, but there is rental assistance at VSH. And then there's 4 AIDS service organizations in the state, and they assist with not just rental assistance, but with first, last deposit, and utilities, things like that.
You probably work with some of that at NIP, do you? No?
And then a little footnote here about the city of Burlington. So HUD has the CDBG program split between entitlement communities and state programs. Entitlement communities tend to be the metropolitan population centers, the larger
50,000 or more.
50,000 and more. So the city of Burlington does qualify with HUD as an entitlement community, and they receive a direct allocation of CDBG entitlement funds. We administer the state CDBG program, and we cover the rest of the state. Every state across the country does have a mix of entitlement communities that receive direct funding, and then also their state programs as well.
Well, and then the mix of the funding actually is 70% goes to entitlements and 30% goes to states. So the driver, as you can see, are the entitlements. So when it comes to this argument about the reauthorization of the program, you can see where the mayors across the country, they have a big, strong force. And they're the ones that are afraid they're going to lose. So it's a strong force to bear when there's only 30% of us that are fighting the battle here. So we'll see how that goes.
And then looks like other organizations that we do partner with and work with closely and collaborate with would be the public housing authorities, who are included in our con plan as well as continuum of care and the 13 regional homeless providers outside of Burlington that also apply for HUD funds through a single application.
Yeah, so just to add a little bit on the public housing authorities, each of the public housing authorities do need to get certified through us, for instance, by the commissioner, that their plans that they're putting forward to get additional funding from HUD directly are consistent with our state consolidated plan. And so we're responsible for reviewing their plans to make sure that they meet all the goals and all of that. So Cindy Blondin in our office and myself have been going through those pretty diligently of recent here, and it's helpful to make sure that they're meeting the goals, because there are certain things within the public housing authority, like for instance, there have tenant committees and things like that they hadn't been really following their plans, even though they were checking the box and saying, oh yes, we're doing that. They really weren't, and they weren't following that. So I think we've gotten a little more diligent about doing that kind of work.
Excellent. And then again, just a little update as to where we're at in the process and the requirement of citizen participation within the con plan. HUD requires that we go out and meet with folks, which we are more than happy to do, and we want to hear from everybody to ensure that we are using the funds appropriately and in a way that meets the needs of the state. Right now, this is one of our regional public outreach meetings. We've done, we did one in Rockingham, we have one scheduled in Arlington, one in Berlin, and one up in Swanton. Well, I say up because I live in Essex, so for me it's that way, but from here it's over, I suppose. We have an online survey that's out there right now. QR code is going to come up in the next slide, but I also have the handouts for those that haven't filled it out and would like to this evening, or take it home and fill it out later at your own time. We have a comp plan advisory board that meets regularly, annually, to advise on our action plan and also advise on our comp plan, and that's made up of partners and that we work with pretty regularly. We try and ensure that there's representation from the home ownership centers, from different organizations.
Religious organizations.
Yeah, that work with low-income households, which is what the funds are
Predominantly for.
Yeah, exactly. We just completed a housing needs assessment last year. Thank you, Jamie, for carrying the torch on that one, which is available on our department website, and it also feeds into the con plan as well and informs our housing priorities and our housing needs. We will have a draft con plan published for public review by March 15th, with the final plan to be submitted to HUD. I mean, it says approved in July, but I think we need to get it submitted to them prior to that.
Oh, yeah, it's submitted in May.
In May.
And then they have 45 days to review it, so it gets approved in July, so we can get our funds in August.
Yes.
Hopefully. That's the plan.
So that's
yes,
kind
Jamie.
Wanted to announce that as of yesterday, our 5-year statewide fair housing analysis is live online too, which also helps feed into the conflict.
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you, Jamie. Is there a link to that as well?
I can email that out. I've got everybody's emails.
Okay. And then will there be like a QR code for that?
So we'll be in the next read, we'll have QR code and links to, this just kind of happened yesterday and just
Sure.
happened
Yeah,
But
sure,
yeah,
sure,
it's
sure.
very exciting. We worked really hard on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
congrats.
Great. Good.
So as of January 8th, just last week, we've had 158 responses. I believe this survey's been live for about a month or so. Yeah, so
That's great.
we're pretty excited about those 158 responses within that short period of time.
We want more.
Yes, please fill it out. Help inform the process. And then looks like we're getting into some community profile data to look at the region. Looks like the next one's in Caledonia County, as well as I think some St. Johnsbury specific. This is data that is collected by the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, and believe it or not, this always blows my mind, that they have the URL housingdata.org, and it is a Vermont-specific housing data website. So I just find that remarkable that of all of the worldwide internet out there, little old Vermont was able, VHFA, Vermont Housing Finance Agency, was able to secure housingdata.org, which is just remarkable. So here we've got, looks like some comparisons between income and housing. I don't know, are you guys able to read that? Do I need to read it
Probably
out?
not. So maybe if you want to read off what, for instance, what are some of the median incomes and household incomes?
Yeah, it looks like statewide Vermont, the median household income is about $95,000, and for renters, Caledonia County, $45,000, if I'm reading that correctly. And then in Caledonia County, the median household income is about $80,000. Oh, statewide, that would be $45,000 for statewide renters. And then so you can see the numbers dip a little bit as we come up into Caledonia County. And then St. Johnsbury has a little bit of a rise there. That's great.
Well, and renter versus owner. Maybe you want to look at that.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the orange is the renters and the blue is owners, owner occupied.
Thank you. Of household types.
Yeah.
And then the horizontal one is going to be annual household income needed to afford an apartment.
There you go.
Caledonia County, Essex County, and Orange County all represented. The different stratizations there are different years, so it goes 2019, 2021, 2023.
Well, maybe look at the most recent, 2023,
Yeah.
for instance, if you can.
Trying to read it on my screen, sorry.
Maybe it'd be easier to read it on the big screen.
It might be. So 2023 for a one-bedroom apartment in Caledonia County, the annual household income to afford it,
Yeah.
33,000, or for a homeowner, and then I'm assuming the orange is still renter,
Yep. Yep.
38,000 in 2023. Oh, thank you. It's a two-bedroom. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, as you can see, housing is expensive, and for a median household income of somebody in Caledonia County with a renter, 33,000 average income, trying to afford a two-bedroom apartment in Caledonia County, where you need to make approximately 38,000, tips the scales against you,
So,
unfortunately.
Joe, you were.
Yeah, I'll look at this data online, but does it look like it's more expensive to be in a rental unit, and the people that are in the rental units make less money?
Yes.
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 I mean, that's a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. It's a big problem. Yeah.
And it's pretty clear, it's pretty significant from what I see here.
Yeah. And again, yeah, I mean, just again to your point there, Joe, the expense of being a renter and then seeing that the median household income based on whether you're a homeowner or a renter is pretty significant there too.
Well, and then this is statewide data of
Yeah.
hourly household income needed to afford an apartment.
So let's see, in Caledonia County for a two-bedroom, you need to be making about $18.35 an hour in order to afford. And of course, that jumps in Chittenden.
To 3106,
Yeah, and yeah,
Franklin's 3106.
yeah, surprising to see
Grand Isle's 3106.
Franklin and Grand Isle as high as they are too.
Yeah.
Man, that is tough.
Yeah. Better live in Essex.
And so then cost burden households, this is a challenging one to see, but basically the idea between the definition of a cost burden household is if you're spending more than 30% of your annual income on housing, you're considered cost burden, and if you're spending more than 50% of your household income, I think it's extremely cost burden or something. It's something to that effect. So as you can see, the red here is showing those that are spending more than 50%, and the orange is over 30%. So again, Joe, to your point, I mean, with how expensive it is to live and learn and live in the state based on your hourly wages. I mean, we're looking at 25 renters statewide in that first column there. 25% of them are 50%, 26% are 30% cost burden. So you're looking at almost half the state population of renters are cost burdened in some fashion in order to afford living in a rental apartment. Which is very significant. And that's in part the whole reason why we try and use these funds is to bring the cost of construction of housing down so that we can provide affordable rents for folks.
Well, and create more units.
And create
net
more units, yeah.
What would be an explanation for why St. Johnsbury is higher than the Caledonia County average? Is it a scarcity of housing? Or
Yes, I mean, that's why I'm saying
taxes or
that
utilities
this
or
whole
what?
idea of putting more net units on the market will help put that, we think, none of us have a crystal ball, but that's sort of what economics tell us, is if we have more units, the cost should come down. But you know, as they say, none of us have a crystal ball, so we don't know for sure, but that's the whole idea.
It may also be because St. Johnsbury is more desirable than a smaller town outside of the city center. The rents in town are higher
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
than the rest of Caledonia County, for example.
Well, and you know, in town there are more services you have to pay for, your police and all of that, where, you know, out in the boonies you don't have the police, and you're on your own kind of, right? Sort of, right? And you get your gun. Yes, Joe?
If you don't mind me just kind of jumping in there.
Absolutely.
Sure, no, hey, that's what,
So
appreciate
the
it.
cost of construction right now, we're gonna bring on more net new units, which is great, but it could increase the cost burden population
Potentially.
by the cost of building the housing, right?
I'll
In
say
order
that-
to make the housing numbers work based on construction costs, that graph could show a higher cost burden, but
So we'll
better
have to
quality housing.
have subsidies,
Right.
deeper subsidies.
Right, so the home, HTF, VHCB funding comes with requirements that rent affordability
Sure.
is set at a certain level to serve lower
Right.
income households. And so sort of anecdotally, what that means is that developers, the folks building the bricks and mortar buildings, are needing to get more creative in their funding stacks to bring in different types of resources to sort of subsidize their
Right.
cost of construction so
Towns
that they
do
can
the
make that.
public-private relationships to step in and prepare sites and stuff to drive the cost of
Yeah.
construction down.
Yeah,
We have
To
very
make those
creative
red numbers.
conversations.
that's allowed.
Yeah.
What you just brought up is happening right now in Akron. In Akron, there are more people renting than the number of people who actually own properties. And because of that, there's a whole lot of rental properties, but that hasn't brought rent down.
And where is it?
If we had something like maybe more renter caps, that maybe that would help. So I'm very glad you brought
Where is that happening?
that up. Akron, Ohio.
I thought that's what, I figured that's what you meant, because I'm
Yes.
from there, around that area.
Next year, we just have a graph of home sale prices. And as you can see, they've been increasing. And as we all know, I mean, I think.
Well, and that was what I was referring to.
Yeah.
So look, in 2022, I can't see those myself either. Good gracious, you want to read those off for me?
Yes, and these look like statewide
Yeah.
statistics on the
So
left.
single family,
Single family in 2022 was 315,000, and that increased in 2024 to 355,000.
which isn't dramatic, but it's significant though.
Yeah, I mean, that's also statewide average.
Yeah. But look at the condominium even though. And a mobile home sold, mobile home with land, 130 to 147,500. Seriously? Oh my gosh. That's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. That's dramatic.
That is,
That's dramatic.
especially because the mobile homes tend to be a low income type
Source.
of, long-term
Yeah.
homeownership. This is like a step into the homeownership realm, and
Yeah.
mobile homes typically are thought to be an easier way for folks to get into homeownership, just because of the difference in the
Yeah,
cost.
and if you look at the graph to what you were
I
trying
was
to
gonna
say.
say, from 1990,
Yeah, I mean, this looks like that's
Yeah.
Caledonia County. Vermont is the green line, and then Caledonia County and St. Johnsbury are referenced there in the graph. But as you would imagine with a home, right? It's an investment. You would envision some increase in the value of the home, but in 2020 that just skyrocketed. You can see on the graph, it just jumped and almost went vertical. I'm not quite sure what we're looking at here.
let's see, affordability calculator. So this tool estimates the home purchase price likely to be affordable to the average home buyer in Vermont. Okay. to afford this house, you would need a household income of that, so to get
Oh,
a
okay.
house of 315,000, you would need to have an income of at least but I think here's the point that we were trying to make was that to get a house at 315,000, you need to have cash in hand available for a down payment and closing costs of $27,000. That's a lot. That's a chunk of change. Who's, young folks, middle income folks, even, who has that laying around? I mean, you don't have enough relatives to go around asking for that kind of money.
Right.
I don't.
And that's for a home at 315,000.
Yeah, when, yeah, I mean, the average home these days is closer to 5.
Yeah, depending on the size you need for your family, and yeah.
These calculators are on housingdata.org if anybody wants to go in and
Yeah.
play around with them, you can do that.
Yeah, and I would absolutely piggyback on that and give a plug to Vermont Housing Finance Agency. It's a wonderful website. Like, you can get lost in rabbit holes clicking around on community profiles and comparing data. It's an absolutely wonderful, amazing website that they put together. And they continually update it too. It's on an annual basis. They use census data. They use home sale price. I mean, I think they source about a dozen different data points, and they pull it in on an annual basis.
They do also keep like vacancy lists for affordable housing properties throughout the state. So property managers are going in there and updating vacancies. So if somebody's looking for an apartment in a certain area of the state, you can go in and plug in where you're looking, and it will bring up places that likely have some availability.
And that kind of brings us to the end of the PowerPoint, looks like. Yeah.
Oh, come back to the smart ones, they didn't photograph of it.
Take your smartphone.
Yeah, so where do we go from here?
Drag some people enough on the streets to have, conversations. No. Comments? Questions?
Yeah, please.
Joe?
I won't be shy.
No, please. Yeah.
So just, can you go back, and maybe I missed it in the presentation, but I think there was 4 priorities that you have as an organization. Now, are those priorities, are those figured internally, or are those figured as part of this process, this outreach and planning process?
Those are the housing, thank you.
Mhm.
Those came about, many, many years ago as we started this whole con plan outreach. And I think as we're not supposed to use the word crisis anymore. Shortage. I'm going to say need, the housing need, as the demand has risen. That is ever pressing against us, so it's never gone away, has stayed right up there as being, priority number 1. And create and retain jobs, that kind of goes hand in glove, right? You gotta have a job to be able to afford your house. Roof over your head, whether it's rental or owner. And so those almost, for a long time, had been sort of neck and neck. Now, I'm gonna say, the CDBG program is the one program of the 4 that are in there that fund economic development. Now, we haven't had a huge demand for economic development, Dave Senator, other than, the Yellow Barn project was probably the last one that was in the door on that. But days gone by, there were more economic development demands for it. But I think it's tough for businesses, but also with the COVID money and all that was flowing in like buckets and ARPA money and everything, there was a lot more money available for businesses to access. And so they weren't coming to our program, which are loans. So that's kind of tapered off. Then the decrease the number of experiencing homelessness, that's always kind of stayed out there because we're all concerned about that. That has risen, obviously, to some terrible dramatic number within our state like we've never experienced before. So I'm gonna say, I almost wanna switch that around myself personally and say it should be increase the supply of quality affordable housing, decrease the number experiencing homelessness, and then create and retain jobs. Because I think the homelessness aspect goes with the housing. That's just, they're almost neck and neck and should be one A and one B.
Maybe they should all be number one.
Well, sort of. I mean,
They're
it's hard. It totally
It
is
is.
hard.
Yeah,
And
it is.
strengthen communities and improve the quality of life. I mean, if you decrease homelessness and you have a good supply of housing and you have jobs, doesn't that do exactly what number 4 is? I mean, so, yeah.
Right.
But that's what we're here for, to talk about, and why we're doing these, is talk about this, and maybe, should we reorder this? Is there a different priority or wording of our priorities that we should have?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, we do have percentages of how our goals of spending the 7 million, like, I want to say like 50% to increase housing, like if all things are created, we get all the applications and we're supposed to pay 50% of them for housing, 30% for jobs, 10%, something like that. But we can only fund the applications that we receive. And
Well, that's our method of distribution for CDBG funds, but that is based on these priorities. That's sort of how we did that. But, now that we're in this 5-year outreach right now in our strategic plan, that should change our method of distribution potentially.
I have to be careful how I say this because I'm in economic development, but without housing, creating jobs doesn't really do much because we've got all these projects now that are bringing on all these employees and we've got no housing and their candidates are leaving, great candidates with families that can move to our community and they're choosing other communities because there's no housing stock.
And we hear that every day.
Yeah.
We hear that every day.
So I don't want to stop creating jobs, so I'm just a comment.
Even on the housing development side, part of the increase in the cost of housing, right? Material one, sort of general cost increases too, but also lack of people to do the jobs. So subs are able to charge more because there are less of them. Supply and demand.
Yeah, wait a minute.
yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things that I know in Akron causes the rents to be so high also is a lot of landlords don't live in the state. So something that I was wondering when looking at those numbers is how many landlords who own these rental properties that people are renting actually live here in comparison to not living here. And then the other part of my question is also the number of rental units available and how much it costs to rent those aren't necessarily a reflection of how equitable the living conditions in those buildings are as well. And I wanted to know if that is a factor that is at play in this environment.
Well, I don't think we have a significant number of out-of-state landlords. We've, I think, pretty much gotten a handle on some of those out-of-state landlords, the larger buildings, taking care of those. Like New Ave here in St. Johnsbury is one of those, for instance. But I'm sure there are some, maybe the smaller buildings potentially. But I think for the most part, I think we're pretty fortunate about that. The people that have rental units here and are largely developers or that we work with, they're here. And they keep we have good management companies, I think, on that score. But your second half of your question there about the cost to rent them, I mean, is that what
Disproportionate to the
No,
quality
it
of
was
the
about
housing.
equitable
the quality.
living conditions within those cheaper rental properties. So like in Akron, part of the reason why we have a tenant union is because the housing that HUD provides assistance with for like some of the poorest members of our community, there's gaps in the doors, windows don't close or don't fit in the frames right, babies and children are dying because of the living conditions, and we've been having to really struggle with that. And I was wondering if like that is something that is also a problem here as well, and how that correlates with how much money people are paying in rent.
Well, I think in Vermont, I don't know, maybe I'm asleep at the wheel, but I think because we are pretty small, that we're not big metropolitan areas. I mean, Akron still is a pretty big city. And you're going to have that unfortunate, you don't have the ability to have a good oversight, I don't think. Whereas because we're so small, it doesn't take too much for the squeaky wheel to get noticed around here.
And I would say too that, like, well, Shannon can probably speak to this, but, you know, our home HTF, VHCB funding stack requires inspections of the units. Annually to ensure that they're decent, safe, and sanitary. And then also our Section 8 subsidies, you know, the tenant-based subsidies, even that are going to private landlords, those also need to pass, I think it might be semi-annually since COVID, but inspections. And so landlords won't get their rent payments. The Housing Authority can stop those if there are violations to health and safety inspections.
So there's also periods of affordability for these units that are receiving federal, like home funds or HTF funds. It can range anywhere from 15 years to 30 years. So during that time span, that's when the monitoring, the annual monitoring is going to be done. And so there's always a cycle of having folks go in and inspect the properties annually and following up with the property managers about, hey, it looks like there were screens missing on these doors, or hey, the elevator hasn't been checked within the last 9 months, and it's out of date. When are you getting it fixed?
And most of these housing projects also come to VHCB for money, and we're unique in the country in that our money has perpetual restrictions, and we're serious about forever. And so even after the timeline for affordability with home or HTF, when the low-income housing tax credit expires, the VHCB restrictions remain for as long as the building is there. And so we also require that the buildings be kept up to provide safe housing. And we have investment in a lot of buildings throughout the state. So the monitoring, we do that annually. And people in Vermont for sure are happy to call their legislators if things are not going the way they think that they should. And VHCB will hear about it if it's one of our buildings that we have money in.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of Vermont being so small, is that people, and when I say the squeaky wheel gets noticed, they do. I mean, everybody will tell on everybody.
All of this was so encouraging to hear.
I was just going to say that if folks haven't seen it, Department of Housing and Community Development and the Vermont Housing Finance Agency did put out Vermont Housing Needs Assessment, a 5-year needs assessment this year. And so that has one whole subsection on rentals and housing quality, because we do have very old housing stock in Vermont, and so you do have issues, especially around like lead paint. But they do give sort of a number of those that have like potentially serious housing safety issues, or potentially serious safety issues in housing. I think, as Leah and others said, that's sort of outside the portfolio of what receives this funding. So I think that's just important to keep in mind, that there may be those serious issues in the private market that maybe don't operate with the accountability of this funding. I don't know that there is a data source for where landlords in Vermont are. So I don't know if there's a solid way to answer that question. I know, anecdotally, I think pre-pandemic, I would hear sometimes, maybe families that have been kind of quote unquote Vermont families, and then they move away, and they're maybe not attending to the unit. I do think that during COVID times, I did also hear anecdotally, there are out-of-state landlords kind of taking it, but again, I don't know that there's a data source that we could point to, but I think it's a really important question to keep in mind. I think, in some communities they're seeing private equity companies come in, and, it just is a good thing to continue to monitor and to, look at what is our housing stock. And again, I think we have a lot of great reports in Vermont that we can look at to help kind of keep a pulse on some of those things.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that whole registry thing is something that we've kind of been after for a long time, because there are clearly private landlords, and we do hear occasionally. I think down in the Brattleboro area, because that happens to be probably one of our focal points for refugees, where there'll be large populations with large families, that there's a large number of people living together in small apartments, which isn't potentially habitable in that way, but that's the only way they can live. And private landlords will let them do that, whereas maybe some of the rest of us wouldn't let that happen. But that does happen, so.
Yeah, and I would just to finish up on that. Yeah, absolutely. As you're saying, Lily, I mean, it's an ongoing challenge within that private market. I mean, certainly, as Leah was saying, anything that's been funded through these programs are monitored on a regular basis and ensure that the housing quality standards remain within those properties. But it's that private sector that we don't really have a good handle on. Our housing division director, Sean Gilpin, has been championing the statewide rental registry for a number of years, but it's got to, in order to get funding to kind of get it moving, it needs to go through our state Congress, and they, for whatever reason, legislature, for whatever reason, they continue to push it down a little bit. We were successful in getting some more, I think, fire marshals that assist funding for that statewide to assist with that. But just in response to some of those same things that we've heard, we've set up some programs within the Department of Housing and Community Development. We have the Vermont Housing Improvement Program, VHIP, which is directed towards smaller landlords to improve the housing quality and work directly with the continuum of care to try and house those who are experiencing homelessness into these new apartments that have just been rehabbed. As well as I mentioned earlier, Rural Edges program to provide low-interest loans and grants to low-income households, homeowners, to do essential home repairs. There's also a rental component of that program as well, where it's marketed towards small landlords to do rental improvements. We can only do as much outreach, and they need to step forward and apply, but we have attempted to respond and set up programs to assist some of those properties as much as we can.
Good question.
Yeah, I'm just curious, has there been any study made about the impact of STRs on the housing inventory, short-term rentals?
Oh, sure. Oh, there has been, actually, but I don't know, I don't have the details on that.
I don't know, yeah.
That I know there's so many communities that, I just find, interestingly enough, read an article that Stowe, I know, passed legislation on the short-term rentals to try to stop them because it is impacting the affordability of regular rentals in their community. That it's really driving up the costs for people that, the regular people that live there can't do it.
Have you seen anything potential impact statewide? Is there any source?
I can't answer that right off.
I believe the housing needs assessment, it does address that.
I was going to say,
They have a section where
there was something in there about that.
it says, 15% of Vermont's housing stock are seasonal, occasional use for vacation homes, which is the second highest in the nation. And so they talk a little bit about short-term rentals. I think, I think an interesting dynamic town by town of how that kind of plays out and is it taking up, what types of homes are these, what would they otherwise be used for, but that the needs assessment does address that to a certain degree in terms of just some of the basic numbers.
Because it's in the past year or two, we've had a couple of homes in Danville that went for long-term to short-term. And that,
Well, it's
Changes the
it's where the
landscape a
money,
little
it's
bit.
where the money is for some people.
what's that?
It's where the money is for some people.
Right?
And that's, people are seeing that as an opportunity. You can't, it's sort of, sort of hard for, whether it's like in Danville, I would think it's, they're sort of near this kind of in-between ski area. It's sort of an in-between area for people, but also for maybe retirees that see this as an opportunity, they can make some extra money and allow them to retire somewhere else, maybe go south, and let their home be used in the wintertime as a short-term rental. I think that that's what's happening. And then in the, like Stowe, that's really right in the heart of ski land. That's really a big driver for them, which is why I think they decided to pass legislation. It was a big fight for them.
At the town level,
At the
municipal
town
level.
level, at the municipal level.
It's
Yeah.
also a priority though to grow tourism, right, and outdoor recreation, so sometimes these strategies kind of run into each other, right?
Yeah.
Certainly do.
Yeah. It's
Tourism trying to bring people in to short-term rentals and other people trying to get long-term
yeah.
occupancy.
Right, yeah, and that catch-22 of us, being a smaller state, we don't have as many hotels, for people
Yeah.
that want to come in as well. It's that tough balance.
And certainly not hotels that are affordable. David.
And I know you suggested maybe a reordering of these priorities, but in a rural region like ours, the most rural in the state, economic development, having CDBG funds as a tool is very important. So a lot of these smaller towns, and I'll give some examples, have one large business or one key industry within the community. And a lot of times they want to grow and there's not many resources out there to help them. And remember, these are grants to the community, but then loans to businesses so that they can repay.
Right.
But for instance, in Greensboro, when Beach Greens burned down years ago, you probably remember this, the CDBG dollars were helpful in getting that business back on its feet, keeping those jobs in that community. Similarly with the sellers in Jasper Hill, the investment by CDBG and other funds to allow them to build their cheese caves and grow exponentially as a business and create a huge number of employees.
Oh, yeah.
It was great. So we hate to see that for a rural area to lose this as a tool for economic.
Oh, and I wasn't intimating that at all, because I still, because we are probably the one of the few sources that is available for economic development. I'm just saying, that is this something, this is our opportunity, as we're doing our outreach, to get informed from everybody that should we be looking at these differently or, reordering these. But I'm totally with you about that, because just as a for instance, you made me think about a program that was listed up here in Hardwick, or is it in Hardwick and East Hardwick, Heartbeat.
Oh yeah.
That we funded. A young woman that came to testify in front of our board that's living there actually has a job at Jasper Hill. And so it was sort of like, yes, this full circle of, that aspect of, we funded Jasper Hill a million years ago, it feels like it was, from the very get-go, from way, way back. And then, here we have this young woman that's been living there actually for a long time, but that she has a job there. And it's just, it's just so rewarding to see that. So by all means, I never want to take that source away.
Yeah, the beauty of the loans to the businesses, when they get repaid, part of that money comes back to us for our regional revolving loan fund, which then goes to help other businesses.
Yeah.
So it does recirculate.
Yeah. It's just, I'm going to say, David, that recently it's been very tough for businesses to repay. We've had some businesses that we funded most recently in different areas of the state that the jobs haven't been able to create the jobs they said they were going to. They haven't been able to retain the jobs they said they were going to, and therefore they haven't been able to repay. So, in your area, we're very fortunate because it has helped, with the Pete's Greens and the Jasper Hill, which has been really a good godsend. So, yeah.
Well, we also have a loan committee of bankers and lawyers, so that helps.
Well, yeah. It's interesting. I think it was somebody up on the Canadian border and somebody down on the Upper Vermont area that was like, you know, oh well, it is what it is. So, other
Yeah.
comments?
Yeah, I would love to see maybe some sort of restructuring or ordering of that in some regard, thinking about like homelessness specific to this area right now. In years previous, the state does the statewide point in time count, and you know, in the thinking about Caledonia County, it's usually inclusive of all of the hotels, of the folks that are in the hotels in our area. Thinking about folks that are homeless on the street, that are in shelter, whether it be through Umbrella, through NECA, whatever that site or that agency is. That we were kind of constant over the past probably 2 or 3 years at about 120 to 140 individuals. Most recently, we've been doing like mini point in time counts for gathering data, and just in St. Johnsbury alone, we have just shy of 100 individuals that are actually street homeless, which is a large increase in what we've seen years previous. And I know we're not in Newport, but thinking about the whole kingdom, similarly in Newport, we're about 65 individuals. And that is another number. Like, Newport has never been a place of visible street homelessness, and we are seeing a dramatic increase of individuals in the Newport area and in St. Johnsbury, which leads to a whole other conversation of the challenges that homelessness, street homelessness specifically, can create for a town, or for the county or whatever. So I think I'd be remiss not to say that like our numbers are increasing dramatically across the state, and there is really a need of getting individuals housed at, within shelter, or and also thinking about affordable housing as we go down. I wanted to make a comment around the VHIP, the Vermont Housing Improvement Program. It's probably one of the most successful programs that this part of this area has seen in a while. We've got an expansive, I wish I knew the number off the top of my head, but do you know,
So,
in St. J?
well, I don't know for St. J off the top of my head, but in general, we have 500-ish completed units, 500-ish underway, and another 300 that applications are being reviewed.
Right, and that's statewide over like a 2.5-year period.
Yeah, and as the
And Rural Edge is fabulous.
yes, I have all the great things to say about Rural Edge. As the lead for the local housing coalition, are what was previously the COC, and the holder of the coordinated entry list for this area for both of the counties, both splits, local housing coalitions. We have seen just an expansive, and specifically in this area, of getting folks into units that were once dilapidated. Thinking about some of the units here on Railroad Street that have turned into gorgeous apartments that are moving people in and out of homelessness. We have an amazing, I think one of the amazing stories of a couple that was at our shelter at Moose River, which is another collaboration with BHCB and NECA and Rural Edge, and so they started off street homeless, moved into the shelter, were able to get some, get on their feet. They were starting to work. They got into a VHIP apartment, got some funding to move into that, and now have been successfully housed for over, I think it's like 6 months, 8 months at this point. And just thinking about, there's this beautiful thing that happens when you combine the need for housing and keeping the population that is experiencing homelessness in mind. So I really just thinking about like those priorities and thinking that right now, creating and retaining jobs is important, especially in this state. But that like our biggest threat as a state right now is the housing. I know you said not to use the word crisis, but it is a housing crisis, and it's a scary thing to see.
We were just told that that's the unpopular word.
No, it is the unpopular word, but it is the word that
It
is the word that is an attention grabber. So
It is.
just appreciative.
Really quick announcement on, but VHIP is an average of less than $40,000 of tax dollars per unit, which is an incredible use of our tax dollars. So please call your representatives and please ask them to provide more funding and base funding for FEHIP and
Yes, increase the state funding for that,
Yeah,
please.
yeah.
And as a
Thank you.
Burke resident, I've also seen the short-term rental decimate our community.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And I think that like talking to legislators around looking at getting some sort of base tax on folks coming in utilizing short-term rentals. There are states that charge, well, it's typically communities that have to vote on it, but that will charge a surrey underneath like a VRBO
Surcharge,
or
yeah.
a surcharge for that, and it actually goes directly back into the community often, and that's just something that I know is kind of like new but is an important piece thinking about our short-term rentals, and how do you balance that scale between we need housing for the folks that are living in Vermont that are Vermonters, but also that we are a state that is driven off of our tourism dollars, and how do you find a happy medium? And I think that often could be the answer of making sure that surcharge is on in every community so that some of the dollars are coming back into programs like this.
Yeah, it would be good if you could isolate those dollars coming back and restrict them to a certain use, because that's the intended purpose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they didn't just get swallowed up.
It's not general tax revenue, it's
Yeah.
specifically designated.
Right, yeah, and I think just to speak on it, like, it's almost municipal to municipality to kind of, enact those a little bit, and, just to say, use Danville as the example, they set it up, set the surcharge, you could set up your own local housing trust fund or RLF that money funnels directly into to then address
Exactly.
housing needs within the community as well that other landlords can tap into, and it would stay all right in Danville.
But thank you for sharing that. I'm so excited because, we're so proud of our VHIP program. And thank you, Jamie, for, the numbers and everything, because we have recently had a presentation in our department of looking at the pictures of all these different units and all that. And it is something that's just amazing what these private landlords are doing with, a small amount of state dollars and then matching with their own private funds.
it's an amazing program.
It's really just amazing, really is amazing. And then to hear something like that where you have a homeless couple that, got in there and they're staying in there and, yeah, that's good.
The last thing I'll say, sorry.
No,
The
that's good.
oxygen,
That's good.
is accessory dwelling units are an important solution to affordable housing and creating housing in our state. And if folks continuing to be able to fund programs that allow folks to build accessory dwelling units on their property, off of their houses, to create a 1 or 2 bedroom space that can be supported and will get folks off of the coordinated entry list, out of homelessness, and into these apartments through state dollars that support it.
So we just need to get our own federal funder, HUD, with the program about accessory dwelling units, because they've got this thing about they have to be within the footprint of the home solely. So they haven't quite caught up with the program.
Yeah, HUD is, I don't know.
They're all for them, but it's got to be within the footprint.
The irony within it that, HUD, even though they provide funding for affordable housing, they kind of restrict who can do the new construction. And so some of these ADU units, I think, would be eligible under the home repair program through Rural Edge, but it needs to be within the footprint of the house. They couldn't do new construction adjacent to or on the property because HUD restricts new construction. Yeah, it's an interesting. But luckily, Rural Edge as an organization is one of the, say, dozen or so nonprofit community development organizations, or five.
Five partnerships.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah,
beyond
the
that, the
NCDOs.
NCDOs and the Chubby-Dos, the community housing-based organization. And well, we added Ascend Housing and, okay. those are the ones who, after they go through that certification process, which we do with our program, and VHCB does as well in partnership together. That allows for them to do the new construction, but even though the home repair program is a little adjacent to that larger piece. Yeah, it's an interesting problem. And then I'll just say too, I mean, I know we got about maybe 10 minutes or so before our time's up. Of all the new large apartment buildings like New Avenue that was constructed here, a component of that, oftentimes is if, like, I don't know the numbers, but I want to say like 30 units of housing was created, 2 or 3 tend to be restricted and reserved for individuals experiencing homelessness. So try and create those housing units for those individuals.
So something else that I was curious about while looking at like how much money people need to make in order to rent is how that number compares to fixed income programs for like people with disabilities and stuff. Because I'm not so sure. I know Vermont SSDI is higher than what it is in Ohio, but I don't know if that's the same number as how much you need to pay for rent.
It's not.
So does that mean that more people that have disabilities and rely on like state income like that in Vermont are probably homeless?
If they don't have access to a subsidy, I mean, they may be homeless, but they are also probably a large chunk of the rent-burdened households. They're making it work somehow if they don't have a subsidy. But I don't know what the demographic is for our homeless households as far as income, if they have any, of what that is.
Okay.
I don't know if you anecdotally.
Yeah, I mean, typically when I think of our coordinating entry list, there are often a significant number of individuals that report having some sort of disability. And that's not specific to this area. That's pretty general, but I don't know the specifics. I mean, I think that what we do well is support the individuals that are on disability with things like subsidies. And also, I think this is just like a shameless plug for like why community action agencies matter in our state, because like those rent-burdened households, the way that they're making it work is by using food shelves and doing the different things to make the ends meet on a day-to-day. But we've got some thrifty Vermonters that are really quite good at keeping themselves housed, no matter what that paycheck looks like.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and then you hear a lot of people say they come here because we are so generous with our services. I think Vermont is known to be one of the states with a lot of services that we help people with. We've got a pretty high rate, probably more so than a lot of other states. And so I think that does help people with the subsidies that we do have and provide.
Thank you for answering my question.
Other comments? Joe?
No, I think the dialogue's been great.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of yin and yang though, you know, it's, you know, short-term rentals. We have a housing registry and a code compliance program here in St. Johnsbury. And, you know, I hear about quality attendants and people moving out of long-term rentals to short-term because of issues with quality attendants. I also see homelessness using traditional tourism beds in communities that then put that demand somewhere else, yet we fight that demand in STRs and we're using hotels for homelessness. So sometimes we're fighting ourselves, it seems, in this problem. I'm not saying there's an answer, a right way or a wrong way, but it does seem like it's that complicated, though it truly is.
It is very
Yeah,
complicated.
very valid observation, yeah.
I saw the announcement for the disaster recovery.
Oh, did you really?
Is that gonna?
Is it for real?
Does it augment what's the same priorities, or does it use
No, it won't be any of these priorities. The disaster recovery money is disaster recovery money. And yes, by Jove, tomorrow is going, the Federal Register will be released. We are getting 67,825,000 or something like that. I don't. But yes, it's for real.
Yep.
It's for disaster 4720, which is for the July 23 flooding. And we'll see just how deep that goes, because there is discussion that it may bleed over into 2024. We'll see how that works. But we really need to come through the Federal Register. HUD finally got smart after several disasters and put out a universal notice that has given us some already preliminary guidance about how thou shalt go about getting our funds, because talk about this to get our just regular formula application. There is a whole process to get our disaster recovery funds. We have to write an action plan. We'll be out pedaling around the countryside for input for our action plan on that. And for even getting pre-award costs for writing our action plan, we have to put in an action plan for our pre-award costs too. You know, it's an interesting process, and we're, you know, as I say, as soon as the register's out tomorrow, we'll all be combing through it and learning what we can do and what we can't do with it. I will say that Doug Farnham from the emergency office in the state obviously has, you know, priority number one about what we do with the money. But it's got to be within the parameters of what that tells us we can do with the money.
Right, and to answer your, like, so I think it's that outreach that we'll be doing around that action plan that will then inform how we propose the priorities and the usage of the
But it's
funds
outside
and
of
the
this.
action. But it's outside, not unrelated to these ones.
Yeah, I was thinking about the flooding in St. J. and Linda's and the people left.
Oh, I know,
Oh, yeah.
you know, as I was coming up here, driving up here, I was thinking, you know, I bet you we're going to get asked about that. But wasn't that really under 2024?
Both,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean-
So there might be some, you know, as I say, you know, I harken back to, you know, Tropical Storm Irene and how we went about that. And working with the Hazard Mitigation Office, you know, a lot of what we did with our money then was doing buyouts and things like that to try to get homes that were flooded out and getting them out of harm's way, and helping people that home was washed away or whatever, to help them get some funding back to be able to go buy a house somewhere else or whatever. But there's, this time around, we're able to use some of the money for planning, which is a good thing. So hopefully we can use some money to think about resiliency and planning what's that look like for the future. And also think about, you know, I think that that's really HUD's trying to, you know, think about this and be smart, so you don't make the same mistakes over and over and over again. It's, none of us have a crystal ball, so what we think Mother Nature went this way, is she going to go that way again? We don't know, but we can try to avoid it.
Let's hope that 3 500-year floods in 12 months means we won't have another one for 1,500 years, right?
I know, seriously, oh my
We
gosh.
will redefine it, that's all.
Yeah, you never know, you don't.
Yeah.
But it's pretty exciting that we are getting that much money though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a chunk of change for us. I mean, considering that the bill was written for 12.9 million, and you know, Hawaii got whatever, and Florida got yeah, 4.9 billion, and Hawaii got a chunk of change, and Florida got a big chunk of change, and North Carolina. And but out of that we got 67 million. That's a lot. It's a lot for us. For considering that I mean, in some respects, yes, the cost of living and everything else has gone up since Tropical Storm Irene, but it seems like the damage was less this time than it was in Tropical Storm Irene. There was such a swath in Tropical Storm Irene that went down through the whole state. So I am actually kind of surprised we got as much as we did.
It's twice as much.
Yeah, yeah. And then, just the political climate of all of that, so we'll see how things go. Yeah, we're going to be moving as fast as we can about it. So, any other questions about that? Any other questions or comments about anything here?
I'll comment that you should take some snacks home.
Oh, yes, by all means, by all means. Well, thank you all for your time and comments. We certainly have been excited to have this conversation with you all.
Well, no, you always have a place to have a community discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe that.
Yes, thank you to Town of St. Johnsbury for hosting it. And NPDA.
His like pepperoni translates.
So you like
So that link was sent out.
Oh, that's a link? Okay.
Yeah, so that was live. Now, I don't know where we'll host it after. My guess is we'll take a recording and we'll be able to send you somehow a link of housing.